Hey everyone, welcome back to the homestead. So on today's video, I'm going to be talking about tips and tricks to have a bountiful and abundant first year garden. Most of y'all know I am a new gardener. It's probably it's my second year on this homestead, but third year gardening. And when you get into gardening or you get into homesteading, it kind of can get a little bit overwhelming because you're comparing yourselves to all these different channels, whether on YouTube or Instagram or whatever it is, and you really just need to stop, breathe, don't compare yourself to anybody. Your garden is going to be beautifully you, the way that you do it. But there are some good tips and tricks that I have learned that I want to pass on to you about having an abundant garden. So make sure you are subscribing and hitting that bell so you know that anytime that how-tos and videos and vlogs come out on our channel. But let's go ahead and I'm going to head over to the greenhouse and we'll first talk about fertilizing.
I'm coming home.
So I know I said first that I would talk about fertilizing, but really the most important part for you to start off, especially as a first-time gardener or as a beginner gardener, is to get a soil sample. Now, if you remember on my podcast with my dear friends, Alicia from Country Mama Musing, Monica from Bland's Promised Land Ranch, and my boo thing, Lisa over at Yogi Hollow Farm, and really Casey from Boots and Bounty, she was in our first season of the podcast, we all did a MYSOIL testing test. We were graciously sponsored by that company and we were sent a MYSOIL testing kit to test our soils. Now let me tell you, at first I was very skeptical about soil testing. I know it's expensive, or I know it's inexpensive and you can get it from your local extension office, but here's the reason to get MYSOIL testing is because it makes it literally dumb-proof. Like me as a beginner gardener at that time, I had no clue what all the numbers and the percentages and all of that meant. I had no clue. It kind of breaks it down line by line and it suggests with links on stuff that your garden needs. And I loved that. And I was able to last year get my garden up to working order, which is how I had such a prosperous year last year with just 675 pounds of cucumbers alone from my smaller garden. It was only about 2,000 square foot last year. But because of getting my soil tested and learning what my soil needed, I was able to then add in the certain fertilizers that the plants needed to thrive. So that is the most important. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave the link down below for MYSOIL testing. We are not affiliated with them. It is just, I just love the company. I think they're wonderful, and go ahead and get you one. It's $30 for the test. You mail it back in. They send you all the kind of stuff to do. I'm going to leave the video that I did of MYSOIL testing right up here. It's simple, it's easy. You get your results on your phone and it's like, boom, so good. So now talking about fertilizer. What I do, y'all saw in one of my previous videos that we were pulling off the ground cover. I am a ground cover person. It's cool if you're not, it's cool if you is. So I'm a ground cover kind of person because I like to suppress weeds that way. It makes it neater, makes it cleaner to do it that way, and it really did work. I will leave a link for all the supplies that I use in our LinkTree link down below. If you want to get it, it costs you no more money. But what I like to do of fertilizing is I like to first do a manure, do a fertilizer, and let it sit on the top of the soil right before it rains. I like to do it right before it rains because the rain's going to help it soak into the soil before you till it up. I did that last year because we had the chicken manure that was left in the chicken coop when we bought the homestead. I did a 10-10-10 fertilizer, and I did potash, which I jokingly called it, well, I didn't jokingly, I thought it was called this, potash, but it is potash. And here's why I did those why I did those different fertilizers. Now the number 10, 10, 10 is going to be your nitrogen, it's going to be your phosphorus, and it's going to be your potassium. And your garden and your plants need those to thrive and survive. So let's talk about each one a little bit more in depth. Nitrogen is going to be your first number, and it helps with the chlorophyll in the plant, which is what, creates the sugar for the water, all that scientific mumbo jumbo. But basically it just means that your plant is going to grow strong. It's giving it that boost that it needs to grow big and strong to start producing the veggies and the crops for you. So that is why nitrogen is so important. Now, what I like to do, and I've actually learned this from a fellow YouTuber, is I like to put rabbit manure in the hole when I'm planting the plants. That just gives it a good old punch of nitrogen. Of course, rabbit manure is high in nitrogen to get it started and growing big and strong. I also do a 10 by 10 by 10. And of course that's 10 of the nitrogen to start off with to kind of get that soil to an even level. And when I plant my plants, when I water the first time, I like to do a fish emulsion spray, which also has the nitrogen in there. So it's getting like 3 different types of nitrogen to get it a good strong boost to go forward. Speaking of fish emulsion is also good for phosphorus. And the reason that the plants need phosphorus is for their roots. You need big, strong, long roots. My friend Sandy over at Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona, on our podcast, talked about that the roots should be the same size as the plant. So that means that if you have a 3-foot tomato plant, the roots underneath should be about 3 feet. And that's when you know that you have a good, strong, healthy plant. The fish emulsion and manures are the different ways that you can add the phosphorus back into your soil, and you can fertilize throughout the season with that. One thing that I like to do is, again, maybe once every 2 weeks, sometimes I will give them a fish watering. The fish emulsion watering, which I do a tablespoon for every gallon of water, and I try to go ahead and spray it because it's good for the foliage too. So that is how I get the phosphorus for the good solid root growth of my plants. And that's for all of my plants, the veggies in the main garden to the fruits to this year we're starting corn, and corn needs to have very high phosphorus soil. So nitrogen and phosphorus is something that we're going to have to make sure that we are covering with our corn going forward during this season. And then you have the potassium. Now the potassium is so that you grow buds, which buds turn into fruit. So it's to make it produce pretty much, because otherwise you're just going to have a tall, thick, strong green plant that's not producing nothing. Now, if you have wilty plants, most of the time it's because you are low in potassium, and go ahead and add some things in there like the potash or the potash to your soil or to the base of the plant to give it that potassium that it needs to produce buds. One thing is that they recommend that when you do potash, or if you water down the potash or any of the potassium compounds, is that you don't get it on the leaves. You put it at the base of the plant, which is what I always do anyway. And it's going to increase the rate of photosynthesis, which is what produces the plant. So that is the most important thing. So really, in my opinion, all 3 of them are important, but your good solid start of nitrogen at the beginning and a good solid potassium midway during the season so that your plants can produce the blooms, the flowers that turn into the fruit. I'm going to walk over now and I'm going to show you all that we have right here. And I've talked a little bit about it, but we're doing, because we don't have our chickens yet and we don't have any leftover chicken manure in the chicken coop. So I did cow manure. So I did have to buy some. Rough. But we bought cow manure. It's a 0.5, but I put a little bit on at the beginning, let it rain in, and then I have it throughout the season to put at the base of the plant. Somewhere behind me, I think over here, if you can see that white bag, is the 10-10-10 fertilizer. And then I have my potash over there along with my fish emulsion, and I have my rabbit manure. There it goes. There's the word, Casey. But now I want to walk over to the plants, show you what plants I have right now, what we're going to be growing, and give you a couple more tips on how to grow healthier plants. So you're going to want to stay all the way to the end to get all of the good tips, especially with the plants. Another thing that I didn't mention when I was talking about fertilizer, and it's absolutely one of my favorites, so I don't even know how I didn't say it, is Calzyme. Calzyme is amazing. It is a calcium-based fertilizer. We are good friends with Stina over at Calzyme. She's been on the podcast multiple times. She is just absolutely amazing. She has even said that you could take it out and just throw it all over the plants. Like as Monica said, a pretty princess, and just throw Calzyme powder everywhere. I like to put it in a water, and again, it's like a tablespoon per gallon, and spray it. I like to put it at the base of plants. I do that with my fruit trees every spring. It is amazing. It actually is so good with helping ward off blossom rot for tomatoes. It is amazing. I love it. Again, it will be in the LinkTree link down below if you want to get some Calzyme. So another kind of tips is when you're planting the plants, especially with tomatoes, and I'm going to get a closer in shot of this where I'm showing, but the deeper that you plant the tomato plant, the healthier and sturdier the roots are going to be. All these little fuzzy wuzzy dovies that are all over your stem of your tomato plant can grow into roots. So when I do it, I literally plant it to probably where the plant starts, where the branches are branching out. I plant it pretty deep with rabbit manure, and it's going to get a good start, and especially with a good phosphorus fertilizing, the roots are going to grow big and strong, which is going to give you a healthier plant in the long run. And with tomatoes, that's what you need, because tomatoes, especially here in the South, are going to give you a long production of tomatoes, even through Thanksgiving sometimes. And I know some of y'all are probably thinking, Casey, why are your plants not in the ground as after Easter? Well, one thing that I do is I do not put my plants in the ground until May 1st, or the first week in May. Why? Because even in the South where it gets hot, and today it is hot and sunny, as you see I'm being blinded, we still can get into the lower 40s, sometimes upper 30s in April at the night, our night temperatures and our lows. And tomatoes and peppers do not like that temperature. So I don't go in until May, and it gives me a little bit more time to get them healthier. I still spray them with the fish emulsion spray while they're seedlings like this. It's okay for that. I do a light spray on that, and I get my fertilizing schedule together. Now, even with fertilizing, I do some other ones bi-weekly to ward off and to protect from any damaging things that may happen to the plants. Like I do a copper fungicide to make sure that there's no fungi or mold or any of that attacks my plants. I also do a neem oil spray, and I do that bi-weekly as well to ward off for like the beetles and any crawly-wally little bugs that may damage my plants. And I do that kind of like as a preventative. I do it every other week. I do a Calzyme bath every other week just to make them strong and healthy and produce for you. Because again, it's one of our incomes here at Ormsby Farm is our farmers market and our salsas and canned items that we sell. So we want to make sure that our plants are growing and producing the most that they can and for as long as they can. The good thing is I'm here in 8A, zone 8A, and we can get peppers and tomatoes truly through Thanksgiving. So y'all, thank you so much for tuning into this video. I hope you learned some tips and tricks. I will also write everything that I talk about in the bio box below, so that you can have kind of like a printable or a copy and paste kind of thing of what we do, the fertilizers that we use here on the farm. And then I hope that it helps you with your garden. Remember also, don't compare yourself to anybody else's garden. Your garden is going to be perfectly beautiful just the way that you do it, and it's producing food, and that's the most important thing. So y'all, thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you on the next video. Make sure you are liking and subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you know that anytime that I drop new content to the channel. Go ahead and follow us on social media at Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and Twitter at Ormsby Farm. And until next video, be blessed. We'll see you later. Happy gardening.
I'm coming home.